Hey guys, it's Andrew, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Scary Mysteries today. In this episode, we delve into some terrifying yet awe-inspiring tales that showcase the unparalleled courage and unwavering determination a father can have. Just get ready to be inspired and amazed as we unveil the remarkable stories of extraordinary dads who selflessly dedicate their lives to protect and ensure the safety of their precious children. Here are 5 heroic fathers who sacrificed to save their child. Number 5, Anthony Jefferson. The last thing any parent wants to see is their kid getting hurt. It was supposed to be an uneventful run to the car dealership for the Jefferson clan when Dad, Anthony's worst nightmare, unfolded right before his eyes, prompting him to make the ultimate sacrifice. On July 21st of 2020, Anthony and his 3 children, who were ages 6, 5, and 2, visited a car dealership in the Bronx. They were there shopping for a new ride to surprise his wife, Danica, for her upcoming birthday. It was a little past 7 in the evening, and the shop was still bustling with customers on that warm summer evening. The 39-year-old and his kids were sitting on a couch inside the reception area when suddenly, out of nowhere, a man approached the dealership and opened fire through a glass door. Instincts immediately kicked in for Anthony, who then scooped up his 3 children with his 2 hands, brought them down to the floor and covered them with his body from the barrage of bullets. Chaos ensued as shards of glass were sent flying around the showroom as the family crawled further away looking for safety, and everyone in the shop ran for cover wherever they could. But then, just as quick as it started, the shots ended. When the chaos and Anthony's adrenaline died down, he realized he'd been hit in the thigh. Though it wasn't fatal, the injury and the incident took a toll on him and his family. With a bullet deeply lodged inside his leg, the father later found it hard to get through the workday. He's been fired from 2 of his jobs since then, the first one as a painter and second as a construction worker. The kids, according to reports, suffered severe trauma to the point that their mother, on many occasions, found them crying in their sleep while having nightmares. Meanwhile, the police investigation into the incident indicated that the shooting was gang-related. 2 of the alleged shooters have been apprehended and questioned, but that investigation continues on. As for the victims of this unfortunate event, hope came in the form of thousands of donations made by Good Samaritans. Knowing that it could take a while for Anthony to find work, the donors pooled up about $300,000 worth of financial support. And the Jefferson kids also received free therapy sessions to help them get over the traumatic event. The masses were profoundly moved by a heroic father who, in the face of imminent peril, fearlessly protected his children from danger's clutches, and thankfully, everyone made it out alive. Number 4, Greg Alexander. It was supposed to be a memorable backpacking adventure for Greg Alexander and his son Gabriel, who had just turned 16. But they had no idea that their exhilarating journey would turn into a harrowing tale of survival against nature. In June of 2015, the Alexanders packed up their bags and headed into the dark backcountry of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. They were already on the 3rd night of their 5-day hiking trip and had been following all the recommended procedures as to not attract the attention of wild animals, such as bears. When the 2 reached about 40 miles into their 50-mile trek, with the sun setting, they decided to settle down and set up camp for the night. They each had a hammock so they could gaze up at the stars. They said their good nights and then they went to sleep. It was in the dead of night around 10 p.m. when Greg was then startled awake by the sounds of Gabe screaming at the top of his lungs. There was enough light from the moon, and the father was able to see something that could only be described as terrifying. A large black bear was dragging his son across the ground with its jaw locked tightly onto the boy's face. Greg jumped to his feet to rescue his child, who was still wailing loudly due to the tremendous amount of pain mixed with fear. The horrifying sound from his own son enraged the father to do whatever he could, so he ran up and kicked the bear in the head. But that didn't even manage to faze the animal in the slightest. And now, throwing all caution out the window, he then jumped on the bear's back and hit him in the face again and again until the predator finally let go of Gabriel. It backed off a few paces, but continued to make threatening moves towards its prey, not wanting to leave without it. Unwilling to back down, though, Greg stood his ground and made himself as big as possible while screaming. He picked up some rocks and threw them at the bear, and finally, sensing that they may be too much trouble, the animal decided to finally move away. Greg and Alexander took the chance to grab their supplies and run down to the lake where a few campers were sleeping. They asked for help, and the boy was ferried across the lake to Cable Cove, where they called 911. Despite the ordeal, Gabriel was lucky enough that the animal didn't crush his skull, and despite severe lacerations to his head and face, he was able to recover. The bear was ultimately tracked down as rangers knew it would return to the campsite to try and find prey again, and there it was killed. This chilling story of an unprovoked bear attack is undoubtedly concerning, but it's Greg Alexander's incredible act of bravery that has captivated the world. In the face of mortal danger, Greg proved to his son that he is a fearless protector and a real hero. Number 3. Liam Crockett. Liam Crockett was only 21 years old when he and his girlfriend Sarah Mackenzie had their first child, whom they lovingly called Lily. Liam was a local factory worker, and the trio lived together in a modest apartment in East Kilbride, Scotland. One evening, in November of 2014, their entire neighborhood was woken up by the blaring sound of fire alarms. People were then scrambling, filtering out of any door and window they could as billows of smoke began to envelop the entire apartment complex. Liam was in the room with the 1-year-old when he noticed the flames tearing through the building. As he tried every exit, he realized they were essentially trapped inside and the situation quickly looked helpless. With dark smoke in one direction and fire in the other, the dad was trying to figure out what to do. But time was of the essence. Parts of the building were caving in as the seconds passed, including the very floor they were standing on. But in the midst of the chaos, Liam saw his only opportunity. Through the thick black smoke, he saw the only way for them to escape would be from a window in their room. And so with Lily wrapped in a blanket and being held tightly in his arms, the father rushed to the opening. The problem was, though, the window was 3 stories up, just too high from the ground for them to jump together. Luckily, there were people down below, and Liam took the chance to drop Lily down into one of the spectators' arms. Once she was safe, the man had no option but to jump himself. Sarah was not home at the time of the fire, but she rushed to the scene immediately after being informed of what had happened. Although almost all their possessions were lost, the parents and their child are now safe back in each other's arms and can start fresh somewhere new. Number 2, Dustin Wakefield. Drugs are often involved in some of the worst crime sprees because when people are on them and in an altered state of mind, their sense of reasoning is lost. In August of 2021, Dustin Wakefield and his wife Karina, along with their 1-year-old son, left their home in Colorado, headed to Florida to enjoy the summer on Miami Beach. As they were having a meal with some of their in-laws in the outdoor dining section of a restaurant, a man named Tamarius Davis approached the family. Without warning, Davis pulled out a gun on the 21-year-old. These 2 men didn't know each other. In a later interview, Karina said she remembered her husband pleading with the gunman not to shoot, saying, "Please, I have a son. He's just a boy." But Dustin's begging fell on deaf ears. The shooter went on to pull the trigger. At that moment, witnesses recalled how Mr. Wakefield stood up and attempted to shield his wife from the perpetrator. In the midst of the panic, he still had the presence of mind to grab the infant and hand him over to one of their in-laws. It was a terrifying moment as onlookers recalled how the shooter, after gunning down his victim, continued to fire his gun even when his target had already fell to the ground lifeless. He then danced over the deceased man's body in a sadistic fashion, like he was celebrating the kill. The gunman then immediately fled the crime scene. Apparently, Davis had also randomly attacked another man on the same street just minutes before this incident at the restaurant. Luckily, that victim had only suffered non-life-threatening injuries and survived. Dustin, however, did not. Quick to respond, police units were able to track down the killer in an alleyway next door. Videos taken during the apprehension reveal that the suspect surrendered to authorities after being subdued. During an interrogation, Davis confessed to being high on mushrooms at the time, which, according to him, made him feel empowered to shoot Wakefield and another customer for no reason at all. He wasn't even trying to rob them. He was then arrested on murder charges and held without bond. Wakefield's tragic death brought immense shock to his family and relatives. However, if anything, this incident further cemented his reputation as not only a kind person, but a father willing to give his life for his family. Number 1. Chris Schultz. Father's Day will never be the same for Chris Schultz and his family after what happened on that fateful weekend in June of 2019. Chris and his 3-year-old son Ashton were enjoying a little pre-Father's Day outing at Deadshot Bay in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. The two were standing on a bridge looking down at a fish swimming placidly in the water below. Ashton, as curious and adventurous as he was, unknowingly crawled through the rail and fell right off. Someone who saw what happened yelled out, and Chris, without a second thought, dove straight down into the water from the bridge. He was able to grab hold of his toddler, who, at the time, was wading helplessly in the water, gasping for air. Dad managed to hand his son off to a bystander who was near the shore, but the problem was, Chris wasn't exactly an experienced swimmer, and he himself struggled to keep his head above the water. According to witnesses, Chris was able to hold on to the Good Samaritan for a few moments. Over realizing that the person could only securely hold one of them, Chris then chose to let go. It would then take almost half an hour before he could be pulled from the water. EMTs were able to rush him to the hospital alive, but ultimately, he died a few hours later after being admitted. Even after his death, though, the 31-year-old continued to demonstrate his heroism. According to his brother, Mr. Schultz had instructed his family that in the event of his passing, his organs should be donated. Chris was survived by his wife and 4 young children who will one day look up to him as a selfless hero who was willing to offer his life in order to save not just his sons, but even strangers too. For all you parents out there, you can certainly understand why these men acted the way they did. As the protector and provider, it's instinct to save your children, even if it means losing your own life. And while it's of course sad to lose anyone, these stories have an uplifting side to them and show us that there are things in this world that go beyond ourselves. So there were 5 heroic fathers who sacrificed. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe and hit those notifications. For more from us, please follow our social media links in the description below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there. I'll see you soon.